Alright guys, this is the lecture video for lesson 5.5-2. It's called Midpoint on the Coordinate Plane. So these are the notes that we did in class, and so I've already worked them out. I'm just going to go over and explain what's going on. So in 5.2 we're dealing with midpoint, and we've dealt with midpoint before, but we've dealt with it on the coordinate, on the number line. So now we're going to do it with the coordinate plane. The only difference in this is that on the number line, we had one coordinate, right? Just told us how to go left and right. Now we've got left and right and up and down. So you're going to have two coordinates, remember, like x, y. That's how they're written in that format. So if we remember how coordinates look on here. So for this P1, I have all the endpoints and everything written down, and as well as the midpoints. But this is kind of just to show you how to find midpoints using a graph. So for number one, let's look at AB first. So our midpoint right here was, wait a second, change my color. The midpoint for the first one was what, 2, 4. So it's right here. All right, it's 2, 4, and we can tell it's the midpoint because it's exactly in the middle of A and B. All right. Okay, CD. Another one we can tell exactly where the middle would be right here. It is at 8, 5. When you have lines that are diagonal, not straight up and down or straight side by left to right horizontal, it's a little bit harder to see, but you can kind of still tell which one's in the middle of it. For EF here, okay, for EF we can see that in the middle right here is the point 5, 2, and 3. And that's going to be our midpoint. You can see it's in the middle because it's just kind of easy to eyeball, right? I usually kind of draw it out like that to make sure those two shapes are the same, to make sure it's exactly in the middle. And then for GH, the midpoint is what, right here? So it is 11, 2. So we can find the midpoint easily using a graph, but not always. We don't want to always have to draw out a graph. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking the endpoints of a segment, and we're using those endpoints to find the midpoint. And that's what our midpoint formula does. So the midpoint formula says the coordinates of the midpoint of a segment with endpoints x1, y1, and x2, y2. So these are our endpoints. Our two endpoints, then we take the x coordinates and the y coordinates and plug it into the formula for the coordinates of our midpoint. So the formula says we take the two x's, divide them by 2, which is what we did right there. x1 plus x2 divided by 2 is equal to, that's your coordinate of your x coordinate of the midpoint, and your y coordinate is going to be just adding the two y coordinates of the endpoint and dividing by 2. That's what we have right here. Okay, so some examples. I'll explain A and B, and then you can see the rest of the answers. So for this one, we have A and B. This is my x, remember? This is my y. So we add the x's to get the new x coordinate, and then we add the y's, divide by 2 to get the new y coordinate. Alright, so for the x's, we have -5, -5. So -5 plus -5 over 2. So I'm just plugging straight in. Then we have 4 and 18, so 4 plus 18 divided by 2 is what we have right here. Then let's simplify for our second step. -5 plus -5 is -10, still over 2. And then 4 plus 18 is 22. That's still over 2 right here. And then we'll simplify one more time to get our final answer. So -10 divided by 2 is just -5, and that's our x coordinate, remember, for our midpoint. And then 22 divided by 2 is our y coordinate. So this is the coordinate of the midpoint. We're finished. So if a question gives you two coordinates of the endpoints and it asks you for a midpoint, this is all you have to do. All right. So some of the questions, you have to read the question carefully and see exactly what it tells you, and that's how you'll solve that one. Or we do the same thing for the rest B, C, and D. So I'll do B with you, and then I'll leave you to look at C and D and figure them out. So remember, we have our x coordinates are -3 and 7 in this one. So we have -3 plus 7 divided by 2 for the new x. And then for the next one, we have 14 plus 5, and that's divided by 2 for the y. So 4 over 2, and then 19 over 2 simplified and simplified again to get 2, 19.5 is our answer for the midpoint. That's the coordinate of the midpoint, remember. Okay, so that's that for that. For P3, let's read what it says and try to break down what it's asking. Segment UV has endpoints 2, 1, and V, X, Y. The midpoint, so I know these are endpoints, and then the midpoint of UV, so we know this is the midpoint, is 4, 3. We want to find X and Y. So essentially we're finding the coordinates of point B. Okay, because we don't know, we know one of the endpoints and we know the midpoint. So it's not going to be as easy. We're kind of working backwards a little bit to find this one, to find the endpoint. So last time we were given 2 endpoints, find the midpoint. This time we're given a midpoint and an endpoint. We want to find the other endpoint. So what I did is I just take my 2 coordinates that I'm given of the endpoints and plug them into my midpoint formula. Alright, so for the x coordinates, I've got 2 and x to give me 2 plus x, and then divided by 2. That's as far as I can go right now with that, as I want to right now. And then 1 plus y over 2, again, because our y is right there. That's all I want to go do for right there. Alright, because 1 and y. So this formula, this expression represents our midpoint. But we know what the midpoint is 4, 3. So we know whatever this is going to be in the square, or the rectangle, is going to be equal to 4, 3. Okay? So what we can do is we can set up 2 equations, one for the x coordinate, one for the y coordinate. And that'll help us solve x and y. So I just take the x coordinate of this, because this is the x, right? And then we take the x coordinate of here, and we set them equal to each other. So I've got 2 plus x over 2 is equal to 4. Alright, and then I do the same thing for the y. I do 1 plus y over 2 is equal to 3. So those are my 2 equations right here, 1 and 2. This is for x, and this is for y. So to solve these equations, we'll look at the first one right here. I want to get rid of that 2 on the bottom, so what I did was I multiplied on the left and on the right 2. That's because I know these 2's will cancel out, and that's why I have the slashes on the left. So these 2's cancel out. That leaves us with just 2 plus x on the left side now. And then we take the 4 times the 2, and we get 8 on the right side. And then you subtract 2 from both sides to get that x is equal to 6. And that is our x coordinate for V. Now, let's go over to y. Again, similarly, we multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of that 2 in the denominator. That's why I have the slashes here, because those 2's will cancel, leaving us with 1 plus y on the left side is equal to 6 on the right side, because 3 times 2 is 6. Subtract 1 from both sides, you get that y is equal to 5. So that's our y coordinates. So what we have found here is the coordinates of endpoint V are 6, 5, because x is 6 and y is 5. And with that, we're finished with that one. Okay? So this is just know if you're given 2 endpoints, if you're given an endpoint and you know the coordinates of the midpoint, but you do not know the coordinates of the other endpoint, this is what you'll be doing. Okay, next. Point A is the midpoint of CP. C has coordinates -4, 6, and point A has coordinates -12, -9. What are the coordinates of point P? So our 2 endpoints are C and P. So endpoint, and then A is the midpoint, right? This is the midpoint. And then point P is an endpoint. So what we know is we know the coordinates of the endpoint, of one endpoint and a midpoint. We want to find the coordinates of point P, which is an endpoint. So we're doing the same exact thing we did last problem. It's just worded differently this time. So that's why we have to be able to read the problems and understand what we're given and what we know and what we're trying to find, because they can be written different ways. So we're just going to, since we do not know p, we're going to let p be x and y. Okay, we're going to solve it kind of like we did last time. So our endpoint coordinates are -4, 6, and xy. So we plug into the formula, and we get -4 plus x over 2 and 6 plus y over 2 and that equals -12, -9, because those are the coordinates of the midpoint. So we find our two equations. So we've got the -4 plus x over 2 equals -12. That's what I have right here. We multiplied both sides by 2. Didn't even write them down, sorry. So remember, those 2's canceled. It left us with the -4 plus x is equal to -24, and then add 4 to both sides to get x is equal to -20. And then same for y, multiply both sides by 2. These 2's canceled, leaving us with 6 plus y is equal to -18. And then we subtracted 6 from both sides to get that y is equal to -24. So that means the coordinates of point P, which is the one endpoint, are -20, -4. Okay, awesome. Moving on. Find the coordinates of the midpoint of a segment with endpoints J, which has coordinates A, B. Then K, 5A has coordinates 5A, 6B. Write your answers in terms of A and B. So we want to we're finding the coordinates of the midpoint. Okay, so that's what we're finding. So I know when I'm trying to find a midpoint and I'm given coordinates of the endpoints, because J and K are endpoints. And we're just going to plug into the midpoint formula and solve it as far as we can, because we're going to, it says that it wants us to write our answer in terms of A and B, meaning we're not trying to solve for A and B here, we're just trying to write it. Your answer will have A and B in the answer. Alright, so let's plug into our formula. Our x coordinates are A and 5A, so A plus 5A over 2. Our y coordinates are B and 6B, so B plus 6B over 2. Now we simplify. A and 6A add up together to give me, A and 5A add up to give me 6A over 2. Then B and 6B add up to give me 7B over 2. Okay, so now we simplify. We'll get rid of that divided by 2 there, and we'll have 6A over 2 is 3A, and 7B over 2 is 3.5A. And that's this is B. That's our answer. So similarly for this one, we just plug in our x and y coordinates. It's asking the same thing. So our x coordinates for this one are, if I can, my things will, okay. The first one is 2c plus d. We get 2c plus d and 20c plus 17d. Okay. So let's plug that stuff in. 2c plus d plus 20c plus 17d. And that's what I have right here over 2. Okay. And then my next one will be c and 3c plus 4d. Okay. So that's for our y's. Plug them in. And then let's combine like terms. 2c and 20c give me 22c. D and 17 give me 18d all over 2. And then 3c plus 1c is 4c, and then we get left with 4d over 2. Simplify again. We want to get rid of that divided by 2. We're just going to divide every number divided by 2. So 22 over 2 is 11c. 18d divided by 2 is 9d. So we get 11c plus 9d. And then the same thing on the right, we get 2c plus 2d. That's it. So that is lesson 5-2. I hope this video helps. If you are still having trouble with lesson 5-2, please go ahead and email me and we'll see where you are having trouble. All right. Thanks, guys.